Join me as I spend a day at the Department for Education and I see what goes on in this building, and I also get to spend some time with the Education Secretary to see what she does day to day. The day started really early as I hopped on a train and made my way to the Big Smoke. Now, the reason I've been invited down to the DFE is that on the podcast last year when I interviewed Bridget, she said this.
Is that I will always listen to and work with the profession. We've gotten to a bad place at the moment, and I want to reset and rebuild that relationship between government and schools, and that has to involve listening to, respecting and working with the people who deliver for our children, and moving away from, I think, far too much of the negativity that we've had in recent months and years.
And true to a word, here I was, invited down as a teacher to see what actually goes on. Now, the first thing you notice when you walk into the DFE is just how flipping big it is. It does not look this big from the outside. It's quite overwhelming, really. And it was up to the 6th floor where I was shown to my own room for the day. Look at this sign, no expense spared. I was then greeted by the Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, who invited me into her office where we had a good catch up and a chat through what's on the agenda for today. So it was a packed day. And I also got shown the big red box. So this is what's given to every Secretary of State, and I got to see what goes inside that before then sitting in on some really important meetings around things like attendance and recruitment and retention. And it was really interesting to see where they're up to with things, what the next steps are. But more importantly, they were actually asking me for my ideas and insights, and they seemed to be really receptive to a lot of the ideas I put forward as to how we can improve retention even further. I was also able to sit in on a meeting around AI. Now, the government have been really proactive in trying to encourage teachers to embrace it, to help reduce workload alongside support teaching and learning. And again, it was really good that I was able to share some of my ideas for how I feel AI can be used effectively, but also how important it is to have that education around safe use, especially with a new curriculum on the way. I also sat in a social mobility webinar with Bridget before having some lunch and then doing a couple of interviews with the DFE and then accompanying Bridget in the ministerial car as we went on one of her school visits. Now, we had a bit of time in the car to chat about all things education and also lots of other things. I tried to convince Bridget to join me for a game of paddle next time she's in Manchester, and then we arrived at the school. Pearswood Primary School in Kent, part of the Woodland Academy Trust, was the destination, and I've been told they are doing some fantastic stuff with technology, so I was really excited to see what they were doing. So we were greeted by some of the staff and the lovely head teacher before being shown on a bit of a tour where I got to go in some classes, and they've got one-to-one devices in the school, and it was amazing to see how they are being used. Had to stop by EYFS and get involved there, so I joined the Reception's Got Talent stage show, giving a rendition of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. It was also the school sports day, so I managed to catch the parents' race where luckily there were no injuries, and then was able to speak to some more of the students alongside staff to really have a look at how technology is being used, speak to the staff around their use of AI and how that is really helping in reducing workload, but also supporting teaching and learning, which was really, really interesting. And it was just fantastic to see such effective use of technology. I was also able to record another podcast interview with Bridget 1 year on since our first one, reflecting on her first year as Education Secretary, and then a few more reflections before leaving the school, but not before some selfies with all the staff, which is always so special. And a massive thank you to the wonderful staff at the school for making us feel so welcome. A big shout out to the team at the DFE for inviting me down, and most importantly Bridget for allowing me to shadow her for the day. And it was a long day, but reflecting on the way home about some of the positive change that I'm seeing in education, granted not as fast as some of us would like, but I do feel with certain aspects we're really starting to turn a corner, and you'll be able to hear more when we drop the podcast interview very soon.